pre-RAF, and I got this book the other day from Marvin Rosenthal, and I'm pretty much, just reading his book, just trying to, brush up on this this concept or this theory of pre-RAF, and it's pretty interesting, guys. I was brought up pre-trib, from Assemblies of God, and once I left that denomination or organization, whatever you want to call it, I kind of started doing my own research and, looking at everything, logically kind of like led me to see the scriptures that, I don't think, it's going to happen on the pre-trib of all the things we're seeing right now. And, George Bush wanting to, before he leaves office, he wants to get this thing, wrapped up, and he wants to get this peace treaty going. I was like, man, there has to be something in the scriptures that has to teach us, the timeline on when all these things are going to happen precisely. So I started, falling into the line as post-trib, because it started making a lot of sense in regards to, Jesus coming and, and us, the saints, going through the tribulation. But this is my, my belief and my understanding. And I kind of stood there for a season. But then I started doing some research, because I'm always, I'm never satisfied sometimes with some answers that I get, so I have to keep digging and digging. And I came across, because I only knew there was only pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib, and that's it. And then this other concept comes of pre-RAF, and it's just blowing me away. I just started reading the book, and I'm only on chapter 1, but I've been listening to a lot of audio teachings from the preraf.com website, with Charles Cooper. And, man, that brother blows me away, the way he puts this all, in, like, timeline, back to back. And that's what I've been up to, and doing some music, writing some tunes, for some commercials and stuff, trying to see, hopefully I get some of my tracks picked up by a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW, whatever. And working, and that's about it. Just doing some podcasts and just pretty much studying end times. I think the Lord is leading me to the end time stuff, and that's where I'm at right now, pretty much on the pre-RAF. I'm just trying to see if this, I have these two ideas, tossing them back and forth, post-trib and pre-RAF, and I just want to see how this theory, falls in line with the scriptures, and if it doesn't make sense or not.
Mark?
Yeah.
You want to chime in on that? I know I'd like to hear your input on that too.
Well, it's funny because I jotted down preref.com, and when we're done here, I'm going to head over there and take a look and see what the website has to say. I mean, I myself as well was pretty much raised pre-tribulation, in the corporation that I belong to, but. I've kind of fallen away from that mindset at this point. I really don't see it. One of the earlier podcasts I had done, Left Behind by the Jesuits, I think it touched on it a little bit. Really haven't gone too deep into it, but it's going to be interesting to see what preref.com has to say. It certainly makes it makes a lot more sense to me than a pre-trib rapture. That's for sure.
Actually, the I don't know. I did take the first Rapture show I did off the server, but the one that I did as much research as I've ever done on pretty much anything, even though I still probably left a lot untouched and didn't do it very well. The revisiting the Rapture show, that's the conclusion that I came to, was pre-wrath. But then again, I think somewhat providentially having David Lowe on there, who I don't agree with about the. I'm sure this is such a hot button topic. I'd really rather not even get into it. But at the same time, I don't agree with David Lowe about some things. But I think that part of what he's saying is definitely falls in line. But specifically, I don't. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what they have to say as well.
I think it's one of those. It's one of those topics that I like to try to remain open to. I mean, I think I've personally pretty much closed the door for myself on the the pre-trib rapture, but I'm still I'm not going to stand up and shout, hey, this is the answer. I mean, I'm going to keep my ears open and my eyes open, my heart open, and keep searching, and can't wait to see what Ziggy does with with this because you've come up with some great audio posts there, and really love listening to them. So I'm sure this is going to be great.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
really cool.
It's been good.
And it's also great that this is such a topic that is just so heated, and I think the only way to approach it is with really letting our prides down and let whatever makes logical sense happen. But man, it's great that we can all get along. Really, I don't know if anybody had a chance to. I just recently heard somebody sent me some stuff about some people really going after me about the Rapture thing or whatever. But I got to hand it to them. I mean, at least they're doing something.
Well, to me, the Rapture has been part of the divide and conquer philosophy of those who would do just that. You've got guys like well-respected people, Chuck Missler, for example, who's a pre-trib guy. It's hard to listen to Chuck Missler and not have a tremendous respect for the teachings that he does, and yet he's a pre-tribber. I think it's one of those issues where, at some point there are those who would deliberately use it to try to divide the church. And I think that, as Christians, we have to understand that we're not all going to agree on every aspect of, biblical theology. But, gosh, we sure as heck have to get along, through it all and understand that at the end of it all, it's all about Christ. And that's really what it comes down to. I want to tell you, Chris, I think that was a really cool thing that you did, the way you took that piece down, because it said, hey, this is what I believe, and you're real strong with that first piece. And next thing we know, several months later, you put up this other piece, and saying, hey, I learned something, and I think I disagree with what I said a long time ago. I thought that was a really big thing to do.
Right on. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So what about you, Mark? Now I saw you put up the post about the Indigo children. How did that end up playing out?
Well, it ended up with me not being very satisfied. I mean, I kind of looked at it from one perspective. I think I took it from the point of view that there are many people. This is being promoted, okay, and there are many people out there who are really overjoyed to jump on the bandwagon and say, hey, you know what? There's nothing really wrong with my child. My child's an Indigo, and that's what it's all about. And I listened to the podcast after I did it, and I said, you know what, this didn't even scratch the surface, and I felt a little harried in doing it because I had been waiting for Stephanie to do her part 3 on the the Sunday Law, and she's been very sick, and she wasn't able to put that together, so I put it up, and then I got a really interesting email on the show from a woman out of Texas who told me, I've been involved in a lot of this New Age stuff. I've been saved. I'm washed in the blood of Christ, but I can tell you a whole lot about this. And she went on to tell me about, people who indigos that are born with a certain genetic type that doesn't exist in non-indigo children, how indigos are only born to non-believers and not believers. So, I thought about it, and I said, wow, I may have to go back to this and really do some type of a follow-up on it because, I really don't think I did a thorough job on that. But it's a very in-depth subject. I mean, it could take several podcasts to really make sense of the whole thing.
Mark, what is Indigo? Is it like kids that have like special talents?
Yeah, that's the way it's being promoted. It's being promoted as they're the evolution coming into this Aquarian age. They are the next evolution, the spiritual evolution in man, and they are special. They're teachers. They're there's no other way to say it. They are supposedly this next evolution in spiritual thinking and spiritually sensitive beings. And so we as adults should actually, encourage them, indulge them, and understand who they are and that they're here to be listened to and learned from rather than to be taught so much and guided. When you read some of this information on indigos, it's that blend of truth and lie. There's a lot of things in there that sound good. teaching, for example, where the teaching is based on the child's need rather than on the system trying to put the child into a box. And that sounds good to just about any of us that have ever struggled, going through a school system. But when you turn around and you look at what they're ultimately trying to do, some of these kids are so indulged, looked at and respected as authorities at very young ages that they're pretty much allowed to run amok. And I think, Chris, like you had said, they'll eventually become, indigo adults. And I touched base on that podcast. There's a website out there, and a guy named Toby who, for $400 a session is willing to, help you adjust your molecular structure to really, bring the indigo out in you as an adult. So, there's a huge scam. But at the same time, understanding that some of these indigos may have something different in their genetics leads me to believe that, there could be a whole big genetic manipulation thing going on out there that is actually breeding a different type of a child. And it becomes a very, very involved and complicated subject, and that's why I feel like I really just scratched the surface and looked at it from one tiny little perspective and still have a lot to do there. Right.
I wouldn't doubt, there is a lot of the stuff that they're doing with gene technology and stuff like that is just incredibly weird. And like Cindy was talking about, like all this money that they're throwing into the black hole of NASA to go to, space projects that may or may not, who knows what's going on with all the money that they're throwing into it. But these DARPA stuff and all this stuff that they do, if you even go to the DARPA's website and just I'm not that they're into gene control or whatever, but, it's such science fiction stuff. Who knows what's going on with all that.
Right, and you never know what's going on behind the scenes. Whatever we're able to access and whatever we're able to see is what they want us to access and what they want us to see. And so it's so important, even though maybe to some degree impossible, to really dig behind the scenes. Sometimes you almost have to look at what is materializing in the world and try to work your way back and figure out where did this come from. So if I can do some follow up on indigos and find anything to substantiate some type of a gene that exists in these childs, supposedly that is tested, that can be found, and try to work our way back and see if anybody's actually manipulating, children to be something other than what we're accustomed to, or to be made up genetically different than we are. I'm really not sure right now, and I'm open to anybody that has information that wants to send it my way. I'd love to follow up on it.
Right.
Now let me ask you a question, Mark. When, what's the cutoff point for the indigo children? Is there like a date where they're born after a certain point?
Yeah, there was. I don't have my paperwork in front of me, but I'm going to say somebody said they were born after 1980, I believe it was, and someone else said after 1978. But I could be off. But you obviously have seen that there is a specific date. I have piles of paper here, but I won't find it that quickly if I try to dig through it. But yeah, there is a date that these children are born after. And so
since we're sitting here, I had a thought, and it's probably a totally random thought, but you should try cross-referencing that with test tube babies.
Right. Okay.
I just punched that in, and the first one was born July 25th, 1978.
Well, see, that's very interesting. I'm making some notes here. No, that's a great.
I don't know if it got anything to do with it, but I was just looking at 78, and I knew that they had something to do with the 80s, but I wasn't, early 80s, but I wasn't sure of the cutoff.
Yeah, I'm almost sure. I remember reading in approximately the 80s, but I remember, as a matter of fact, it may be in this girl's letter that she had mentioned 1978. I'll go back and I'll look at that. But again, it's a pretty involved study. So I think maybe what I'll do is from time to time, when I have enough information, maybe I'll do a follow-up on that podcast and just keep trying to uncover whatever I can.
Ziggy, did you hear Cindy about the weather wars and all that stuff that she was said earlier?
Man, I did a podcast show a couple of months ago on that. I kind of did like a series. I called it weather control, and I pretty much got like the specialists that cater to that, on that field, like, Scott Stevens. He's more like on the weather, on the clouds and weather manipulation. Dr. Nick Bigich, he was pretty deep. I got that audio clip from Coast to Coast interview, and he pretty much breaks it down.